for this specific breakout, we wanted to talk about multi-cloud networking. Really, in practice, what we want to talk about is how to build the best network highway for your applications across transport and cloud. We wanted to give it a more of a practical taste, especially because we know that this is a buzzword that we hear a lot around in the industry. And with that in mind, we wanted to introduce a little bit of context and walk through some customer use cases, what we actually did to, and we've been doing to help them solve some challenges. And then later talk a little bit how we can actually help you. My name is Umberto Mattei, and I am product manager for cloud networking services at Orange Business. And I have with me my two technical arms, the faithful Alessandro Legnani, consulting delivery manager at Orange, and Giuseppe Di Pasquale, cybersecurity specialist at Microsoft. So we'll be speaking together for this specific session. And it's just random that we are all in Italian. The session is delivered in English. So for going back to what was presented by Elliot this morning, this is part of the Evolution platform. So we're going to be talking about the 3 C's, the connectivity, the cybersecurity, and the cloud. And over here, we wanted to really focus on the conversations we had with customers over a while, actually. And we had in mind a specific fictitious customer. We're going to be calling it the Acme company. And over here, we wanted to really summarize some of the challenges we've been hearing. Like, for instance, being able to operate services across multiple clouds, being able to have a balanced infrastructure for different needs, and also provide consistent security and performance for the applications. So this might be a fictitious persona, but if we, let's say, scale back and look at the whole big pictures, there are some numbers that confirm these trends that are quite interesting. The first one, we're all familiar with this. It's really the fact about using multiple clouds, multiple cloud providers. It usually happens, at least in our experience, because there are developers that have different needs, or there are services that better fit with the type of products that a company wants to produce. But what is interesting is that we've been speaking with customers, and they were like, oh, so I have to connect to this specific cloud, and I will use this technology. Then I will have to connect in another region. Maybe I will use a different one. And then it can become a little bit different to ensure a consistent configuration. So what we've seen in the numbers is that, and that's what Gartner also offers as an analysis, is the fact that there's an acceleration today about consolidating towards a single connectivity and network stack to manage network across multiple clouds. And we estimate it to go up to 35% in a very short time from now. The third one is security. Of course, we talk about security all the time, but what I find quite shocking and what we saw as numbers is the fact that 74% of security decision makers today estimate that over the last 12 months, their data has been breached. So when we think about the sprawl of network and different types of connectivity and technology, it becomes top of mind to make sure we enforce our security policies correctly across our infrastructure estate. So basically, we wanted to really get on this practical taste of things and analyze some of the challenges and things we've heard from you. The first one is more related to skills, I would say. Here we read, our move to cloud ambition is growing and we are a bit lost. We cannot configure networking in AWS or Azure by ourselves, and this in a coherent fashion with respect to our cloud connectivity services. So it's hard to master the network and the cloud at the same time. So this is some of the things that we've been hearing. And this challenge can be referred to as mastering connectivity and cloud. But there's also other challenges that we see. And another one, for instance, is on average, it takes us 3 months to make sure the right routing and security rules are in place to start migrating an application to the cloud. And this is due to lack of network orchestration functionalities. So this is the case when we have a transport and a cloud portion of an infrastructure estate, and we have, for instance, this change request looping back and forth to make sure that all the touch points going from a user site or a data center to a specific cloud region are fixed and set up so that a migration can start. And in this specific case, we heard things like, this problem is really delaying our projects, our migrations, and we can incur in additional hosting charges or for services we don't really need today or we're not going to be needing soon. So this one would be more a challenge where we master operations, and this is what Alessandro is going to help us with today. And the last one is really about reliability, I would say. We think about how we make sure we maximize the uptime of our network highway I just mentioned. Here we talk about things like it took us weeks to troubleshoot a networking issue on a critical application hosted across multiple clouds, and this downtime severely affected our business. Here we're talking about our application not performing correctly, something that is very business critical like SAP or a database service and containing transactions from a business, and not being able to understand where the communication fails. So here we talk about reliability because we want to make sure we set up the right path and the right principles to ensure uptime and to make sure that we can recover from any potential failure really, really quick. So for these specific challenges, we like to talk about cloud networking. And over here, essentially, we heard a lot about this term, but to us, really in practice, is bridging what we have on the transport connectivity layer and the network in the cloud. We can bridge them together to actually achieve things like visibility, performance, making sure operations go right, just pinning back to these specific challenges we heard before. This is something that we can look at from the perspective of a single cloud, especially if most of our workloads are running there, or if we have many regions that are actually used from the same cloud provider. Over here, we will bridge connectivity and a specific cloud provider, like for instance, AWS. Or we can look at it also from a multi-cloud perspective. This usually happens when our cloud estate is very, very big, and we are using in a more or less balanced fashion multiple cloud providers and connecting them to our sites. Over here, the idea on our end is to really create a suite of products to design, deploy, and unify operations across the transport and the cloud portion. So let's circle back right now and shift gears by going into how we can potentially address these challenges by looking into some use cases. Over here, going back to mastering connectivity and cloud, here we're talking really about skills, making sure that we have all the appropriate network configuration in the cloud. And on a specific cloud provider, we have a customer story, for instance, in insurance and financial services. Over here, we were speaking to the customer about different move to cloud acceleration programs. And the customers seem to be a bit lost about how to define the appropriate landing zone in the cloud, how to configure the appropriate network that can match the connectivity towards that specific cloud. So there were multiple projects of this type at the customer. One of them was a quite urgent CRM system migration that was to be done on AWS. Over here, we provided expertise by giving transversal network and cloud skills, and we actually defined a scalable solution. But at the same time, we wanted the customer to be autonomous because they felt like they wanted to learn and they wanted to be able to run their own solution once it's implemented. So really, a key element here was the customer success through their training on the job as we were deploying the solution, so that they feel confident and go ahead with the run of this specific service. Now I'll give it to Alessandro for the second use case.
Okay. Thanks. Thank you for attending this session. In essence, when you start moving your application to the cloud, you soon realize that you're adding another layer of complexity in terms of networking, routing, also security, on top of your traditional networks. maybe interconnecting multiple SD-WAN overlay networks, maybe spread across different regions with one or more cloud service provider can be really challenging and can take much longer than expected. Okay, finally, pictures. This topology diagram, it's definitely what our multi-cloud networking is all about. It's when, let me use the pointer, this one, I don't know. It's when a multi-cloud software gateway, this one I'm pointing to, is integrated inside our composable and modular evolution platform. It's about an automated, on-demand interconnection between the overlay of different multi-cloud networking software like Alkira, Proximo, and Aviatrix, and our evolution platform POP. This solution has been designed, developed, and tested in order to meet and also anticipate specific needs coming from many customers of ours that in most of the cases have already started their cloudification journey. What we often hear from them, for example, is it's really difficult to find experts on one or multiple cloud service provider architectures. Clouds are black box to me. What's happening behind the scene? There's clearly a lack of visibility also of, on costing when it comes to application running in different hyperscaler. I have very strict security policy for my traditional network environments. How can I ensure to apply the same policies when my traffic goes into the cloud? How can I have the right level of performance in terms of throughput, jitter, loss, and delay? That's where we came out and we added the possibility to insert a multi-cloud connector, think about this one, within our evolution platform console. That in essence is our infrastructure as a service dashboard. The moment I select the multi-cloud connector, a multi-cloud networking software virtual network function here is spun up and service chained inside our evolution platform POP. That's what's happening. Essentially, what we are doing, we are extending, the pointer is not that much, we are extending the multi-cloud overlay you see here on the right of different players like Aviatrix, Alkira, or Proximo up to our POP. Thus providing full site to many cloud communication through a single connection, this one I'm pointing, that can run either over internet or using a private link. Again, we are stitching together your SD-WAN, also traditional networks and sites, with your VPC and VNets sitting in different hyperscaler. Thanks to this integration and partnership with those players, we are providing a solution that has been designed to be at the same time, number one, I would say solid and reliable in terms of performance and also routing capabilities. Simple, as we are, yes, we are consolidating a function, another function, alongside other possible functions like SSC within our evolution platform POP. Secure, because we have a design that can provide end-to-end encryption, segmentation, and micro-segmentation for traffic to, from, and inside the cloud. flexible, because this solution has been designed to be an on-demand consumption-based service. And also easy to manage, as it comes with an enriched application-level visibility and troubleshooting tools. The whole idea of this is to facilitate, to speed up your cloudification journey. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Alessandro. So we've seen how this specific type of use case we've been working on can actually pin back to those pain points about mastering operations, since we have a common layer that spans across the telco and the cloud portion of the estate. So now we are moving on to the third use case we wanted to take a look at, which is more related to mastering reliability. Over here again, it's a challenge of making sure we can really recover from failure, if not avoid it altogether. So over here, we have been working with a customer who was already using Azure. And there was a networking implementation connected together with some connectivity services. And over here, the way it was configured, it had this stacking effect, a sort of like stacking of static routes, for instance, or things like that, which make the configuration really difficult to manage, especially if you have to do troubleshooting. So there was not a lot of confidence based on this kind of incidents that were there. Over here, what happened really is we started up from the design phase, and the idea was to redesign this network highway with the cloud and the connectivity in mind, and doing it in a centralized fashion. So we're thinking about a common transit network layer, but especially with a lot of attention when it comes to doing operations. By that, I mean that we really played with those principles you might have heard of about site reliability engineering. For the ones who are not familiar with this was a term that was first popularized by Google, and it's the idea of taking software engineering practices and applying them to infrastructure. So in particular, we used it by creating some custom dashboards and KPI that can actually monitor the network portions connecting this application. So we can actually go in and monitor and make sure that all of those potential bottlenecks, potential pipes are actually always working all the time, and recover if they're not. By doing this and doing it as code, we also managed to leverage some tools that like Azure DevOps that help with compliance as well. And lastly, the final touch, really, I would say the cherry on top is how we do operations once we manage the service for the customer. So over here, we are providing a unified managed service across connectivity and network in the cloud, so with a single contact point. But behind that, there is a team of experts who were also involved with the delivery and the design of the specific architecture. So they're really familiar with the challenge the customer has. We're really familiar with why those KPIs were created and how they should be monitored. So this is really what we wanted to have to make sure to enable a seamless SAP performance. The specific use case, as I was saying, is on Azure, and Azure is a partner of ours, and we've been working with them for a quite long time, I'd say. First on their traditional core products, over the last few years with Azure. And we wanted to give the chance also to Azure to expand a little bit more on this and talk about their specific services in this space. And that's why I give my word to the third Italian, Giuseppe.
Still in English, right. So again, before starting my part, let me say thank you to the Orange team for the opportunity to present this content to you. So I'd like to link my presentation to the last slide and the last use case presented by Umberto. So hub and spoke is a desired architecture we would like to find in every customer. But I can focus the attention on the word insecure communication among virtual network. So when we think about networking nowadays, we need to change a bit the approach and evolve our thinking about it. So embracing the zero trust model, I don't know, it's a buzzword, not anymore, for sure. We think about zero trust for identity and device, but we can apply with a network stack solution, even in the networking part. Cloud native, every CSP, especially Azure, has a lot of solution, network solution, cloud native. What is the meaning? I don't care to take sizing and make some investment on hardware appliance. I have a SaaS, a software as a service solution. Can I turn on and use it immediately? So this is the powerful of the cloud for every CSP, cloud service provider, but especially with Azure, with a complete network stack that we will see in a minute. Again, enabling the DevSecOps model. Security is an everyone responsibility, let me say, starting from the dev to the IT operation. So this is meaning when I approach to a security model, a network security model, I don't need to think that a web application firewall, for instance, can resolve any problem of my web application, right? And I need to involve the SDL, the security the development lifecycle, and then move in the IT operation with some specific tool protecting my application. And at the end, deploy at edge. What is the meaning? So before the data, the packets enters in the data center, I can block malicious packets at the edge. So adopting solution that helps my organization to protect from this type of attacks. Then let me describe better in a defense in-depth model the network security stack of Microsoft. So starting from the basic, nothing new, because it's the evolving concept of protecting virtual network. So let me switch to the next one, starting from the Azure firewall, and linking my discussion to the Umberto's case. With Azure firewall is a cloud native firewall again, and I protect with a next generation firewall functionalities my workload, especially when I link virtual networks in an hub and spoke approach. Then moving on, the Azure DDoS. You can't avoid to use an Azure DDoS protection solution, especially, I don't know, nowadays, do you know the threat actors called no-name, which does a lot of attacks against the states which support Ukraine, for instance. So it's a mandatory requirements for our solution. And again, Azure Bastion. Azure Bastion permits myself to adopt a secure connection through my virtual machines without exposing them. Let me do an example. I expose a public endpoint with an RDP port or SSH, and with the use of an HTML browser, I can connect to my workload in a secure way. Again, last one, the web application firewall. Again, when I protect my web application, I can use the web application firewall, linking it to a content delivery solution. With the benefit to protect my web application from the OWASP top 10 list attacks, but I can build a custom rule in order to, I don't know, avoid traffic from specific countries or block IP that is performing against me a DDoS attack. Then let me put this all together, bringing to you a specific use case in the healthcare market. Okay, the use case for today is the secure connected patient care, an advanced IoT solution that helps the healthcare company, in this case, to protect the patient data in a secure way. Again, the network security stack in this example is fully adopted, and we will see in a minute how all working together. It is starting from the left. There is the building, the hospital site, and the satellite campus. For every hospital building, they monitoring, I don't know, patient healthcare and the facility performance. Every data that is picking up from the hospital site is forwarding through the 5G access network. And after this, the data flow into two systems, the Hadoop service, HID, and the application service deployment. Every piece store data in a secure way, and with the application security service, we pre-work data in order to ingest this data into the machine learning system into Azure, right? After this, we will receive important insight, especially for the patient data, and again, mapping the hospital data, okay? What is the meaning? Mapping the air quality, blood pressure monitor, so not only patient data, but also the facility. Receive a lot of insight about them. So where I can put network security stack over there? The first one is the web application firewall. Protect the sending of the data against the two systems I mentioned before, using protecting API and the web application service. Again, DDoS into the two main services protect because they are exposed publicly, and so they protect against the public DDoS attacks. And at the end, among all the virtual network, the Azure firewall with the next generation firewall functionality protect the communication among all the virtual network. So this is only an example. It is very Azure-based. But the most important message here is that we can use all these services in a multi-cloud environment. So multi-cloud networking, let me make an example. The web application firewall can protect a web application on-prem in your data center or in another CSP, another cloud service provider. The same for the Azure firewall. I can build a VPN, and in the middle of the VPN, Azure firewall can protect and filter the data. And last example about DDoS. I can configure DDoS in Azure to protect from the DDoS attacks the on-prem service with a specific configuration, and I don't know, other service exposed in other CSP, cloud service provider. So let me switch the voice again to Umberto for the final part.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Giuseppe. As you might have seen, we try to speak on different levels as based on the registration we received. We saw a variety of profiles, so we wanted to give some technical content, but also some more high-level content. And as I said before, we've been working with Azure for a long, long time. These guys are, of course, more technical than me, as you've seen. My job is to really think about how do I make it simple for someone like a customer to get started on this. And some of the examples we had in mind, these are some of the consulting offers that we created in the Azure Marketplace and that you can access by scanning this QR code. Over here, you will find the description of what we typically do if you want to get started talking about cloud networking. The first one is called our Design Clinic. And it's more of a briefing, technical discovery sessions where we can let you know what kind of cloud networker profile you are today and give you some of the tips that were useful to us working on other customer projects and get started and see what's the next step really. The other one is for some reflection that is more later in the cycle of a project where we already know a little bit what we want to do. So it's more of an assessment where we can actually work on a specific problem statement and give recommendations and insight and set up a roadmap together on cloud networking. So switching gear again for the last part, more related to how we can actually help on this specific services. We like to start always by the status quo, what's today, what's the business challenges and the ambitions. And after a first meeting, we really see that there are two different approaches we can take, also based on the level of maturity that we see regarding the technology. The first one is more related to working on the why or the what. We're thinking about more those business level related questions like TCO analysis, what's my strategy, what's my strategic partner technologically speaking. But there is also a practical approach that is more like bottom up, where we really start working on POCs or pilots. We test the technology and we see if it fits for us, if it can solve a problem for us. And once we landed that and we validated that, how can we scale it to have a much bigger impact on our own infrastructure? So of course, based on those activities, there will be some decisions taken, some implementation, and it's kind of a cycle because of course things change, we reevaluate and reassess. So this is really how we like to work in a consolidated fashion with our customers and help them. Going back to more the product part of this, in essence, as you've seen, we talked more about use cases. So you could see it, this service is more as a technology vertical or solution-oriented vertical. In essence, in practice, we're working with 4 types of services. We're working with connectivity services, of course, and the cloud infrastructure services, but we're also working with consulting, professional services, and managed services. Lastly, I wanted to really zoom in again on some external validation that we've been getting by doing this kind of work. The first one is about the technology that stands behind the services. It's more related to the partners. As I said, we've been doing business with Microsoft for a very long time, and we were one of the first to delve into the networking certification space, for instance, and it is very important, I believe. But there's also, looking from above, the analysts that actually recognize us is in very good places for the connectivity and the cloud, and that's what we're doing here. We are bridging them together, really.
Orange Business.